Hello anatomy students. In this video we're going to talk about the organization of the nervous system. After watching this video you should be able to explain how the nervous system is divided. We're going to talk about 3 different ways to do that. And you should be able to identify the parts of the nervous system that belong to each division. So let's start by looking at the 3 main functions of the nervous system. The first is to monitor changes in the environment, which are called stimuli. All of the stimuli are then packaged together, and these packages of stimuli are called sensory input. The sensory input is going to travel to the central nervous system, the brain, and the spinal cord. And it's there that the sensory input gets processed and interpreted. The central nervous system is then going to create a response, make a decision, and that response gets sent to effectors or structures in the body that are going to facilitate the decisions that the central nervous system made. This is called motor output. The central nervous system involves the brain and the spinal cord and is shown here in the picture highlighted in green. The central nervous system acts to receive and integrate, to evaluate all of the stimuli that comes from our environment. And I don't just mean the environment outside of our body, but also our internal environment as well. And then our central nervous system is going to devise a response. The peripheral nervous system, which is highlighted in yellow, includes all of the nerves that are found outside of the central nervous system. And these include the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves, which we'll talk about later on. So, the central nervous system involves the brain and the spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system involves all of the nerves that are outside of the brain and the spinal cord. That schematic is classifying the nervous system by its location in the body. A second way to classify the nervous system is by information flow. So we have an afferent branch and an efferent branch of the nervous system. The afferent branch is going to conduct sensory information, again collected from our environment, and take it to the central nervous system. The efferent branch is going to take the decisions that the central nervous system has made and is going to transmit that information to effectors, which will then carry out what the central nervous system wants and produce some kind of response. And so if you take a look at our flow chart here, a stimulus is going to be sensed by a receptor. The receptor is going to send this sensory input via the afferent pathway to the central nervous system. The central nervous system is going to integrate and process the sensory input and create some kind of a response. The central nervous system sends that response through the efferent branch, which reaches an effector, like a muscle or a gland, and then that muscle or gland is going to produce a response that is hopefully congruent with what the stimulus was. The other thing that I just wanted to mention is that the afferent pathway is the sensory pathway, while the efferent pathway is the motor pathway. We can also classify the different branches of the nervous system by the regulation of effectors. So as I said before, effectors are going to be structures within the body that are going to carry out the decisions that the central nervous system makes. We have a somatic division and we have an autonomic division. The somatic division is going to stimulate effectors called skeletal muscles. And we did talk a little bit about skeletal muscle, right? We know that it is striated, and we also know that it is voluntary. Like, we have control over the movements that our skeletal muscles make. So the skeletal muscles are controlled by the somatic branch, or the somatic division of the nervous system. And I just wanted to make mention that the root soma means body, and the skeletal muscles are our body muscles that are going to allow us to move our body. So let's take a look at this diagram that we have here. A stimulus will stimulate a somatic receptor, or a special receptor that is going to carry information along the somatic sensory division afferent pathway. And as you can see off to the side, this pathway is found in the peripheral nervous system via cranial nerves and spinal nerves. And again, we're going to talk more about that. So this information is going to enter the CNS through our peripheral nervous system, through cranial nerves and spinal nerves, and then it will reach our brain and spinal cord, which is the central nervous system itself. We have somatic integration centers within the central nervous system that are then going to process the information that they've received, and they are going to send a response through the somatic motor division, the efferent pathway. And that is going to stimulate skeletal muscle to either contract or relax, or and to make some kind of response to the stimulus that started the whole pathway in the first place. So the big takeaway from here is that the somatic division is going to control the effectors, which are skeletal muscles. So the somatic division controls skeletal muscles. The other division is the autonomic division, and you can think of autonomic as being automatic because the two words do sound very similar. So if a response is automatic, it means that we don't have to think about it. We don't have to do anything. Our nervous system is going to take care of that happening for us. So if we take a look at our diagram again, just like with the somatic division, we have an afferent pathway and we have an efferent pathway. Receptors are going to collect information, and in this case, since we're talking about the autonomic division, our receptors are visceral receptors. These are receptors that are gathering information from our internal organs. Those receptors are going to send the sensory input through the visceral sensory division, through its afferent pathway, to the autonomic integration centers, which are found in the central nervous system. The central nervous system is going to process all of the information, generate a response, and then it's going to send that information to the effectors, which could be cardiac muscle or smooth muscle or a gland or a tissue. But the interesting thing here is that it can send that response through one of two pathways, either the sympathetic branch or the parasympathetic branch. Both of them are efferent, but depending on which branch is stimulated, the organ or the gland or the tissue is going to react differently. Most of these effectors are innervated by both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic branches. The way that the organ knows to respond is by the neurotransmitter that it is stimulated by. And we're going to talk more about that later on. But you might know of sympathetic and parasympathetic as being related to fight or flight responses. But that's all sympathetic. So fight or flight, that has to do with our sympathetic division. Rest to digest, that's what our parasympathetic division is going to be responsible for. So whereas the sympathetic division is kind of going to get your adrenaline running and hype you up, your parasympathetic division is going to do the opposite and is going to initiate changes in order to bring everything back down to baseline, to slow it all down. And so again, the big takeaway here is that, number one, the autonomic nervous system is going to collect information from visceral receptors, and its effectors are things that we don't control voluntarily, consciously, like our heart rate, like the constriction and the dilation of our blood vessels, like that kind of stuff we don't have to think about. This branch of the nervous system is going to do that for us. Okay, so let's see how much you remember. So I'm going to show you a question. I'm going to count to do a 5 count in my head, and then I'll show you the answer to it. So here we are. Number 1, identify 3 ways in which the nervous system can be divided into smaller chunks. All right, so you should have thought location, you should have thought direction of information flow, and control of effectors. Those are the 3 ways to chunk our nervous system. Number 2, which structures are a part of the central nervous system, or the CNS? And that abbreviation CNS is something that you're going to see a lot of, so commit that to memory. If you said brain and spinal cord, you win. Good job. Number 3, which structures are regulated by the somatic nervous system? And by structures, I mean, what are the effectors of the somatic nervous system? Think soma. What does that root soma mean? If you said skeletal muscles, then you were correct. Number 5, what kind of information is carried along efferent pathways, and in what direction is the information carried? Well, the efferent pathways are going to carry motor information. Those are the motor pathways, and they are going to carry information from the central nervous system to the effectors. So away from the CNS. All right, that's all for this recording. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you learned something and that you enjoyed it too. See you in class, everyone.